The Ivy has been the focal point for a growing campaign to help improve the conditions of workers in the hospitality sector.
Shame, shame, shame on you! Pay your workers what they're due!
We have regular enough protests here at the Ivy to highlight the issue. And we're not arguing with people not to go in or boycott the restaurant. What we're saying to them is if you're going to leave a tip, leave a cash tip. The service charge is discretionary, you don't need to pay that. We think that legislation we brought in that only workers have control of the tips that they get. We think the service charge now is going to be used possibly more often by restaurants to withhold tips going to workers. So you're going to have low-paid workers at €9.80 an hour or €11 an hour, and they've no ability to get extra money.
Julia Marciniak worked at the Ivy and questioned how tips were handed on to staff. Originally from Poland, she's now become a voice for thousands of workers.
I changed a job 9 times, living in Ireland 11 years. So from all the people I met during that time, it's 95% of places. To be honest, I know one place, still one place, it's just the tip jar was between the workers and we share it. Other places, it's shared once a week, it goes to the office, it's shared by manager. It's just often don't make sense, you know? You see, like most of those workers are very young people or they are not native to Ireland. It's the matter of language often, not knowledge of their rights, you know, being isolated in a foreign country, not knowing where to go for help.
Julia fears the government's legislation won't deal with service charges, and given her experience at the Ivy, she feels that could be bad for staff.
It's basically focused only about regulation to make sure that the employers don't pay employees with the tips, and that's the main thing. But it's exclude service charge, and that gives that hole in the law, which might be very quickly abused by the employers to take the money from the staff. If the service charge is applied to every table, like in the Ivy, the people assume then that is a tip. So they wouldn't tip on the top of the service charge.
No one from the Ivy would speak to Prime Time, but in a statement, the company insisted that its discretionary 12.5% service charge doesn't form part of workers' wages. The Ivy says the service charge is shared with all staff, excluding management, in addition to employees' agreed hourly wage. It later explained that an agreed hourly commission rate is added to workers' base rate of pay. But the restaurant wouldn't tell Prime Time what that base rate of pay is, and it wouldn't detail how much the hourly commission rate is either. But the problem is much wider than tips and pay. In the West, the Galway Hospitality Campaign has been active on the issue.
Now, for me, tips is one issue in a much broader endemic culture of exploitation and abuse. We're conducting a survey of hospitality workers and we're sending it out through social media to get as many responses as possible. But already, and the survey's only been live for less than a week, we have 140 responses.
So far, those who've responded to the survey made some startling claims. 74% said they have been verbally abused either sometimes or often. 72% claimed they didn't get an additional allowance for working Sundays. 58% said they witnessed or experienced bullying. And 45% said they hadn't been given their terms of employment in writing, a breach of employment law. But beyond the statistics are some shocking stories. Some of the comments spell out the range of issues workers claim they experience in the hospitality sector.
I'm treated like a horse as they feel like I'm able to do 5 people's work.
Tips were used for walkouts or even to pay for newspapers ordered daily for the bar.
Managers are always doing it screaming at the employees in front of the customers.
I was not allowed back onto the premises to collect my belongings. I did not receive notice, no compensation, not even all my holiday pay. All this from a guy who would not allow me to go home the day my partner had a miscarriage.
People actually don't know what is going on in the industry. And it's not only tips, it's breaks between the shifts, it's bullying and harassment at work. Being talked badly and down at work, it's a norm. And why is it happening? Because they can. Because from the worker point, it's like, who I'm gonna go to complain? That's why I think the unionization is so crucial at this point.
In Kildare town, the system in Hearts is simple. Tips are shared amongst all staff, excluding the owners. A sticker setting out the tips policy is displayed. This could become mandatory under the legislation being prepared by government.
It's certainly damaging the profile, and it could be affecting how people are now looking at their bills and going, is that tip going to staff? And some of the staff have been asked. You know, customers that want to leave a tip will ask directly, is this a tip going to the staff? If they think it's a service charge going, they're less likely to pay it. The sticker, for example, is just a starter. I know a quick response to the issue, but it's certainly one that highlights the fact that Restaurant Association members in Ireland do pass on the tips directly to the staff.
Some say the proposed Sinn Féin bill would have helped address many of the issues, but others disagree. Primetime understands that the legislation currently being drafted by government will allow the Workplace Relations Commission impose a fine of over €2,000 if restaurants don't display their tips policy. A range of higher fines are also being considered if employers use tips to pay staff their basic wages. But it will take time for that legislation to be put in place. In the meantime, what should consumers do?
If it's a service charge already applied off the table, ask to take the service charge off the table and tip in cash. Of course, tip only if you think that the service was good and you're happy with it and you want to leave something extra for the staff.